Episode 5 doesn't really have anything to do with Mythic Quest itself, but it's a really nice self-contained episode. So real quickly, back in the 90s, this couple ended up meeting at a game store because the girl couldn't find any games that she actually wanted to play, so the guy ended up suggesting, hey, why don't you create your own? And they did. They created this game called A Dark Quiet Death, where the premise of the game was you never win, and you just push the monsters back with flashlights. And this game was a massive success. And this is after they had gotten rejected time and time and time again by gaming companies, until a company in Montreal, the same company that has Mythic Quest, ended up giving them a chance. So immediately they tried a sequel, and the more and more sequels and the more down the road they get, the more far away they got from the original point and message of the game. It ended up fracturing the relationship of the couple until finally she ended up leaving. And it didn't take long for the guy to be pushed out as well. And years down the line, they realized that they probably should have listened to each other a little bit more and probably stuck to their guns. And he, Doc, had more regrets than she, Beans, in the whole situation. But once again, the whole tie-in was the fact that they are owned by the same company. In episode 6, Poppy is awoken at work and she wants to go home and take a shower before she meets with Dan Williams. But unfortunately she can't, because one of the coders found a problem that the masked man is giving out tons of free loot, and he's costing the company thousands of dollars a minute. She goes and tells David about this, but David wants to go and tell Ion, and she says, don't do that. He'll make a mountain out of a molehill. Just let me handle it. In the meantime, what you can do is follow the masked man around and attack him, because when he's attacked, he can't give out free loot. And as she's talking to David, she's breaking out in stress hives. So she's dealt with David, and now she has to deal with Ion and distract him. And she puts that tall programmer named Paul, he's the one who actually found the glitch about the masked man, she puts him up in the main office to kind of intimidate Ion, because this guy towers over Ion. And this plan by Poppy does in fact work. As Ion is sitting in his office, Joe is imploring him to go out there and fight him. But Ion says, no, you know what? In my younger days, I might have done that. But you know what? Here, we're all adults and we're working in an office. I'm not going to do that. Plus, he can't be that perfect. But in fact, no, he is. Still, Joe does not give up and wants Ion to take back his masculinity. But now with Ion and David preoccupied at the time, Poppy heads on out to her meeting while also trying to fix the issue of the masked man. Now, Brad and Dana in the meantime have started the streaming, and they've overtaken CW's office to do so. But in the middle of their test run, CW walks in the shot, and that's not good because they're trying to keep this thing under wraps that she's actually an inside mole for MQ. But now that CW's here, Brad tries to convince CW to write a backstory for Dana, but CW doesn't want to do it. So Brad gets the idea of just getting a machine to do it. And as CW is sitting in Brad's office, since Brad overtook his office, Brad wheels in the machine and explains how this thing wrote a backstory for Dana in about 3 seconds. And here it is. Here's the script. And much like Ion earlier in the episode, now CW is the one feeling insecure. But initially, CW tries to convince himself that a machine could not do what he does. And now that Dana is busy streaming, she doesn't have time to actually test the games. So they brought in a guy from the 3rd floor to do that and replace her. And Rachel is not happy about this because this guy is truly the worst. He's the guy on Facebook who says, actually, and then tells you why you're wrong. Eventually, she ends up flipping out on him after he has the audacity to say, look, I don't want to sleep with you. And she says, I'm gay. And he says, well, I bet I can turn you. And that's when she just loses it on him about how he's the worst person ever. So Poppy isn't the only one in the office that is stressed out, but she's arrived at her meeting and she's busy trying to figure out the issue with the masked man until she gets a FaceTime from David saying, don't worry, look, he stopped giving out loot. Maybe the bug fixed itself. And she says, the bugs don't fix themselves, David. But the conversation is cut short when Dan Williams shows up to give her the tour of the place. During the tour, Dan is explaining where she would sit and how they do business, and it's completely different from MQ. And she's realizing more and more as she's talking to Dan that the way they do business over at MQ is completely ass backwards and overall just not really productive. She also notices as she's leaving that the stress hives have gone away, and that's a good sign. Now, one of the examples of ass backwards practice at MQ is the fact that 2 members of the male community have their pride taken from them. And Ion is going down to the gym and just starts pumping iron to try to get that masculinity back, but Paul shows up. And they start getting into a pissing contest about their back injuries and how it happened, but Paul wins because his back injury occurred during a war, while Ion's occurred when his motorcycle fell over him on a stoplight. And when Paul picks him up like a little child to help him with his back injury, Ion really feels emasculated. CW, on the other hand, still can't believe that a machine could do what he does until Dana comes in crying about the script that he quote-unquote wrote her. And that's when he realizes maybe this machine can in fact replace him. So he wheels the machine into his office where Brad is waiting, and he says, look, if this thing is going to replace me, it might as well share an office with me. And Brad says, CW, that thing is an air conditioner. The story that I gave Dana was actually one of your stories from the 80s. how do you not remember that? And he goes, well, I mean, the 80s were kind of foggy. But this reinvigorates CW, the fact that he is a great writer, and he agrees to write a backstory for Dana. When Poppy returns from a meeting with Dan Williams, she walks into the opposite of his place of business, a completely dysfunctional group bashing that air conditioner a la Office Space style. And she freaks out on David for allowing this to take place. She asks about an update about the mass mania. Oh, don't worry about it. He's gone. He vanished. And she says, that's a problem. He just vanished? So she goes to look in the code and realizes, oh my God, we've been hacked. Thank you for watching this recap. If you do not see the next one up in the corner right there on the end screen, don't worry, it'll be up shortly. Please consider following the channel. That'd be cool. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't, there's a thumbs down button for a reason.